Hooray! Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Rosie and I this evening. We are chatting tonight about rabbits, everything rabbits. The title of this talk is What Your Rabbit Wishes You Knew. And basically, we're just going to chat about things to do with bunnies. They're brilliant pets. Bunny owners love them. But I think they are probably the most misunderstood pet that we have, because the way that bunnies think and the way that bunnies live is so different to ourselves, to cats or to dogs. And they are one of probably the nation's most neglected pet as well. But often that is not because people don't love them, it's because people don't understand them. So tonight's talk, Rosie and I are going to go through absolutely loads. We're going to try to not be here too long, but we probably will be. We're going to go through absolutely loads. We're going to go through health, we're going to go through behaviour, we're going to go through how to look after your bunnies, where they should live, how they should live, what they should be doing. So without further ado, Rosie has joined me before. Rosie is an APBC registered pet behaviourist. She also holds a degree and diplomas and all sorts of qualifications. And Rosie, you see rabbits, don't you, in your professional life?
Yeah. So they are often the species that I deal with the least, and I think that's probably because lots of people misunderstand their bunnies, as you've said. So yeah, if they're an outdoor pet, if they're kept outside, often what's not a problem to the owner doesn't end up coming to see me, and that kind of takes us on to, you know, what sort of pet they are and what sort of person might want them as a pet if they understood how to fulfill their needs properly.
Well, they are a very popular pet, aren't they? And they are often bought for children. They're like seen as this sort of starter pet, children's pet,
Easter presents.
Yeah, cheap.
Yeah. And it's not the case at all, is it? And I think from my point of view, bunnies are prey animals, so they don't actually like being picked up off the floor. That's the equivalent of a bird of prey coming in and sweeping them off their feet. Yeah. And what do children want to do with soft, small, fluffy things? They want to pick them up and they want to cuddle them. And if we're going to want to do that with our bunnies, it takes a very slow, gradual process to train them to be okay with being picked up, or training them to hop up onto your lap instead. So they don't actually make great pets for cuddling and holding and squeezing and all those things that children generally want to do with their bunnies.
Exactly. Secretly, they're a lot more independent than we give them credit for. And, you know, I think they're often bought for children. And in my opinion, they're a dreadful children's pet. There's no such thing as a children's pet, for starters. Pets are purchased for children to experience, but adults are always the ones who are in charge. Yeah. But rabbits, I think particularly, are a really bad choice because children, God love them, they're grabby and they want to get in their faces and they want to love them and they want to squeeze them. But bunnies hate that. You know, rabbits absolutely hate that. And of course, when a rabbit's frightened, it's going to kick out with its back legs, got these huge wheels and scratches on their arms. And therein lies the rabbit bought as a gift, played with a tiny bit, and shoved down at the bottom of the garden. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's go through right from the start. So bunnies are kept as pets. They are the third most popular pet in the UK. Who is the ideal bunny owner?
Well, I mean, again, it can be a family with children, but like you said, that as with all pets, really, the adults need to be supervising those interactions and making sure that the bunny is not, you know, put in a position that it's in control. Really, it needs to feel like it's in control of interactions with people. And you know, as well as the bunnies that will react by scratching or biting or grunting or kicking when they don't like an interaction, you'll also get bunnies that go into shutdown. So it seems like they're fine when they're being cuddled and manhandled up on the shoulders, and the bunny's not moving, and that's actually because they've gone into a state of learned helplessness where they learn there's just no point in trying to fidget, and they're playing dead as well, effectively. So you know, when when bunnies will have a predator nearby, they'll often try and play dead and hope that the predator doesn't see them and leaves them alone. So that's the other side of the coin in terms of human interactions and what we can often see from the rabbit. So in terms of an ideal owner, I think there's no such, there's no stereotypical.
Yeah, that was an unfair question. So what's an ideal
Awesome.
What's an ideal environment? How should we keep our bunnies?
Okay, so the first and foremost, is that every bunny needs a bunny mate.
Every bunny needs
a bunny. Yeah. So bunny companionship. Even if you've got a house rabbit and there are humans generally at home all day, that does not fulfill the place of a bunny companion. So that would be my top priority, and the first thing that I ask whenever I really get any kind of behavior problem coming in is, has your bunny got a bunny friend? If not, why not? So it might be that they've lost one, or that they've tried a bonding process and it has failed, and then we will need to discuss potentially how to go about bonding and that bunny to another rabbit. And we never just shove two rabbits in together.
No, that's one of the things that I actually find quite frustrating about rabbits is that they thrive on having rabbit friends. They need a bunny, they need a bestie, but you buy them a bestie, get them a bestie, stick it in the cage, and they fight.
Yeah.
They're not naturally sociable like that, are they? And they have to go through this very slow, careful bonding process, and some bunnies will get on and make great pals, and others that bonding process will break down. And I think a lot of people find it quite overwhelming, and I'm not surprised. I think there's some sort of witchcraft involved personally with it. I used to be very lucky and work very close to a fabulous rabbit charity who would take and I could send people to them. They would take the bunny that had nobody, pick one of theirs, bond them, because actually that's often best done in a sort of territory, and then send back. You'd hand them one, and a week later you'd get back two.
Yeah. And we've got one in Bristol as well that does that, and I'd really recommend, if anyone has got one bunny and needs a bunny friend for them, to contact the local bunny rescue, because they're also really knowledgeable and helpful, and have got lots of bunnies that need bunny friends. And sometimes it is a case of trial and error. Some bunnies, like you said, it's really strange. They're obligate social species. They need bunny friends for their mental well-being, for their health. And yet some bunnies you have to go through trying to find the right mate to bond them with. And it can take several attempts of different bunnies until you find the right one. So just because it might have failed, a bonding process might have failed once, doesn't mean that your bunny wants to be on its own. It just means you haven't found the right
one.
Bunny, yeah.
In many ways, that's fine. People don't get on with everybody, do we?
Yeah.
One question I get asked a lot is, what is the ideal combination? So what would you say is the ideal rabbit combination? So
the other thing we should say when we're talking about this, Kat, is that all bunnies should be neutered, both for health reasons and for behavioural reasons. So on the basis that the bunnies are neutered, I would generally recommend a male and female combination. But again, that's not a hard and fast rule. Sometimes two neutered males, two neutered females can work well together.
Exactly. And I think that, that's so ideally. Let's take this chat back to the beginning. If you're considering buying a rabbit for your family, not for your children, for your family, first of all, you need two, don't you? Yeah. And it does make me cross that shops will sell them in singles, but that's because, the customer wants what the customer wants, isn't it? I'd much rather see them never be sold on their own. And often we're getting them as babies, aren't we? So is there any, when they're bought as babies, do you have any preference? Should it be two girls, two boys, or is always a boy and a girl probably the best option there?
Again, it's not always, but I think it's a good rule to go with, unless there's a particular reason someone wants two of the same sex. But again, once they're, I'm interested in terms of, health and weight of bunnies. I know you've got to bear that in mind in terms of anaesthetics, but, the male bunny is going to become sexually mature at, what is it, 10, 11, 12 weeks.
They grow up very quick, our bunnies, and bunnies do what bunnies are designed to do. So yes, if you get a boy and a girl, you are going to have to be quite hot off the mark. And I completely agree. You know, if you're thinking about buying a rabbit or rabbits, if you're thinking about buying rabbits, that's going to have to be a consideration. If you're getting a boy and a girl, we're going to have to get on with neutering them. And you're absolutely right, Rosie. One big health box to tick is to get them neutered. And my personal preference is to neuter the boys quite early. So tend to be doing those about 3-4 months, something like that. I tend to like to leave the girls a bit later if I can, just because they're so, you know, just to get them a little bit bigger, and the uteruses can be quite fiddly if they're really immature in my surgical experience. But yes, and the health benefits of neutering for buns are massive. Something like 80 to 90% of female rabbits left entire will develop uterine cancer. So they'll get a cancer in their uterus. Massive. It's hugely high. You know, their uterus just turns on them when they're too old. So that's the big health benefit in females. For males, the health it is good. You know, if you're going to live with if they're going to live with a girl rabbit, then you've got to get him done. Otherwise, you're soon going to be living with 101 rabbits. But boy rabbits left entire, or just one entire, will fight and have vicious. The injuries they produced on each other are quite remarkable. And both
each other, can't they?
Oh,
quite, yeah.
It's horrible. It's horrible. The wounds are just, you know, the first time I ever saw one as a baby vet, and I was like, and the nurses were like, yeah, that's what they do. And I'd never, it'll never leave me. But anyway, so I'd much rather, prevention is better than cure. But also for both sexes, being neutered makes them much better pets, doesn't it? Much calmer, much happier.
Less marking behavior. So again, for indoor pets, it's you can house train bunnies. So for indoor pets, that's much easier to do when they're not neutered. You don't get seasonal hormonal fluctuations and changes, false pregnancies with the females. Lots of behavioural, definitely advantages as well. So
I mean, you sort of feel like the boys get a bit teenagery and a bit aggressive, but the girls are exactly the same. And spring and summer rolls around, and they're just
quite literally
hormonal to the max. So definitely neuter your bunnies. And then the other thing, obviously, if you've got baby bunnies at the beginning of their life, is do get them vaccinated. Please bring them in to vaccinate them. We vaccinate rabbits against 2 diseases. We vaccinate them against the one you probably heard of, which is myxomatosis, which is 100% fatal, spread from the wild rabbit population by fleas, and it goes in waves. So you'll get years where there's lots and lots in the rural rabbit population, and it'll clear them all out, and then you'll have a couple of years with not very many. Even if you've got a suburban rabbit, the risks are still there, and prevention, there is no cure, so prevention is the only way. And the same is also
an indoor bunny.
Right? Exactly. Well, exactly, because we can bring in the viruses, particularly the fleas, on our clothes, on our boots, if we go out for a walk in the countryside. Yes, the risk is lower if they never go outside. But I would suggest, I think even the vast majority of indoor rabbits go out at some point or other. And, the diseases are just so horrid. And then the other one we vaccinate against is called VHD, which is viral hemorrhagic disease. Another very, very fatal. There's now 2 strains in the UK. One is almost 100% fatal. The other one is less severe, but still we're looking at a mortality rate, a fatal rate of at least 50%, if not more. So vets will get bunnies in once or twice a year to vaccinate them against all of those diseases. And we've just had a new vaccine come on the market, which actually combines them all. So you can just bring them in once for your annual booster, you can your cats and dogs. It's a bit complicated swapping them over, but it's a great new product, and it just shows, I think, that, rabbits are an important pet and people do love them because there's new innovations in their health all the time. So we've bought our 2 little bunnies, at least. I mean, you can have 3 or 4, can't you? You can have a.
I wouldn't recommend it for novices. The bigger the social group, the more complex the relationships and interactions are going to be.
You can have 2. If you get
off with a pet,
bunnies, your oyster. So we've got our 2 bunnies. We've got them vaccinated. You've been to see the vet, tick. We're at the stage. Sorry.
During that vet trip, so any vet trips as well, and I'm sure you advise all your clients this. So any bonded bunnies must always go to the vet together, even if it's just for one of them to see the vet, because their scent profile will be totally ruined by that trip to the vets, and then trying to reintroduce them back home is going to cause a problem. So 2 bonded bunnies always go everywhere together.
And we're very happy to have a tag along. You know, you need a friend when you come to the doctor. Someone to hold your paw and hold your ears back and tell you it's going to be fine. So that's one thing. Like I really like bunnies, and I think they're great animals. But you know, they're so sensitive, aren't they, to just change. And one comes to the vets, comes back again, and the other one's like, well, we're not friends anymore. You smell weird. I'm gonna bite you instead of love you. And you just think, oh, for goodness, yeah. So we have to do, well, like many of our pets, we just need to do what they need, don't we? And then it's going to be fine.
It makes our lives easier. Yeah, it does.
Exactly. So we brought them both to be neutered. We brought them both to be vaccinated. And I think that, and a lot of bunny owners these days are very, very motivated to look after their rabbits really, really well. And so let's talk about where they should live. Because a lot of people now, rabbits live indoors, don't they? They're indoor pets. They're treated as one of the family, like cats and dogs. Is that okay? Do you think living indoors is all right? And if it is, how do we make our houses
bunny-proof?
Well, bunny-proof, but also paradise. You know, how do we make it a good place for them to be?
Yeah. So I think that indoor bunnies is fine. However, we'll come on to hay and diet in a minute, but part of that is that I think that bunnies should also have an ample supply of grass. So obviously, if you've got outdoor bunnies, that's generally easier if you've got lawn that hasn't been dug to shreds, to provide them. So grass is important. So whether they're indoor or outdoor, that's still important to bear in mind, as well as hay. Indoor bunnies, so basically for both, space is really important as well. And we know that the commercial hutches and runs for bunnies are generally rubbish. They're just not big enough. Your bunny needs space every day to be able to run, leap, binky, when they leap in the air and twist in the air and very joyful. So they need plenty of space, whether they're indoor or outdoor. And indoor, we might need to consider things like the flooring. So we'll often have flooring that's convenient to us, but is really slippery underfoot for the bunnies. So we need to make sure that they're not slipping, sliding. They can leap and twist in the air without the fear of doing the splits on the way back down. We obviously need to be careful of their safety. So wires, we need to make sure the bunnies will think that they are tree roots, and we'll try and chew through them and dig them up. So we need to make
sure which either damages the bunny or stops the telly working. So there's no winners.
No, absolutely.
Wires well out of reach, don't you?
Yeah. And we also need to be aware of the temperature. So we don't want to overheat bunnies in an indoor environment. Can sometimes be a little bit of a risk with underfloor heating and
Yeah.
So those would be my main points. But if that's all taken into consideration, indoor bunnies are fine. And like I said, we can toilet train them, and they get more companionship. So they might have their bunny mate, but they also get more human attention, don't they, when they're indoors, rather than easy to forget them when they are out in the garden.
Yes, exactly. I think they need a lot of space, but yeah, you're absolutely right. They can be litter trained. Rabbits naturally will use a latrine. They're not going to be perfect. They will use pellet marking, won't they? And sometimes urine marking for territory marking. So if you've got an indoor rabbit, I think it's really important that you'll have to expect to clean up after them at some point or other. The little pellets, the little poo pellets, you can sweep those up. The wee is obviously a little bit harder, but you can do that. But one thing about indoor rabbits is they can get quite easily bored, can't they? Because imagine being completely indoors all the time, never going outside or very rarely going outside, and feeling the wind and seeing the light and watching the trees and all of that. It's a very stimulating environment being outside, isn't it? So
even the scent, I think outside is a natural enrichment, isn't it? Just the air scenting all the time outside.
Exactly. And rabbits are on the watch all the time. You know, like you say, rabbits are prey animals. They are hunted by no fewer than 30 different predators, even here in the UK. So they are everybody's lunch. Yeah. So they have to keep a watch out all the time, and that watching, they're always busy, they're always looking, you know, a couple of nibbles and up they come, and look down again. And if the environment around them never changes, and you know, we might think, oh, that's great, you're not going to get eaten or plucked out of the air, everything's fine, but actually it's not very stimulating. What are we going to do? Exactly. So how can we make, if we have got indoor bunnies, how can we make it a good environment for them?
So we need to look at enriching that environment, don't they? So that they've got things to do all day. And one way of doing that is, again, we can use their food portions if we come on to food a little bit. So they're going to have a constant supply of hay, whether they're indoor or outdoor bunnies. So they've always got that to munch on. And then we can use puzzle feeders. We can sprinkle their pellets into their hay, so they have to get rid of the food bowl and get them working for their food a little bit more. We can make sure they've got loads of hiding places. So even indoors, again, that they've got tunnels, that there's furniture pulled from away from the wall so that they can run behind sofas, and you can kind of create your own tunnel system with the furniture if they've got free access. If they don't, then just providing them with lots and lots of hidey holes, things to jump up onto as well. And digging, obviously rabbits will dig, and providing them with something that they can dig in, an area of sandpit or soil that they can dig in, flower pots, for example, is also really important. Again, that's true for outdoor bunnies. If we've got flooring so they don't trash the lawn, they do need to be provided with some sort of substrate that they can dig in.
Yeah, we need to keep them entertained. I think the point about up high is interesting because, you know, we're all used to sort of rabbits living underground. I think most people can appreciate how, especially in indoor bunnies, but also outdoor bunnies as well, they have to have places to hide in. So you'll see a lot of like drain pipes, won't you, or little bunny sort of like little sort of hutches, little sort of igloos, if you like. Yeah. But again, because they're a prey animal and they need to keep a watch, they also like a vantage point. You know, to look out from. And there has been some behavioural work done on rabbits to show that if given the option of going up somewhere high, rabbits will choose that. You know, if you sort of say, do you want to stay on the ground or up? Here's some choices. They will choose to go up high. So have some bunnies safe. It can't be slippy, can it? Because they're very vulnerable to slipping with their nails. Areas, yeah. So if you have got house rabbits, they pretty much, you know, you've got a house for rabbits. You haven't got rabbits in your house, have you? Because you need such a lot. Well, cats and dogs, there's a few toys, a few beds, you know, a bed in each room and a food bowl. Whereas the bunnies really do need, and the space is amazing that ideally they would have. It's, what is it? I think the very minimum is something like 3 meters square. Is that right? It's a big.
Even the minimum is fairly poor in you know, from a bunny's perspective, but yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that bunnies love to do is shred things. So cardboard boxes for them to just shred and rip up, and you know, hanging. So I often use string with clothes pegs on, and on the clothes pegs you've got different bits of green leafy veg for them to have to stand up high and pull the food down, and have to work a little bit more for their food rather than just getting it put in for them to sit and munch on and not expend any mental or physical energy to eat it.
Exactly. And rabbits should eat all the time. Like, let's chat about diet now, because particularly from my perspective as a vet, what I tell people is if you get your bunny's diet right, you have the best chance of having a healthy rabbit for its entire life, because the vast majority of problems that we see in rabbits are diet related. And again, it's often being caused by lack of information rather than people, you know, deliberately getting it wrong. But we often feed our bunnies like we feed our cats and dogs. So the cats and dogs they'll have a couple of meals, a big bowl of pellets or, kibble every day. Or for the cats particularly, there's often a bowl of kibble just sitting in the corner of the room, isn't there? And they just nibble on it. And that's, for them, that's really good. That's really natural. Our dogs meal eat just like we do, that computes. But the rabbits, I tell people, you need to treat your rabbit like you would a little horse, not a little cat or a dog. So if you've got horses or have ever been involved, there is no way you would fill a trough with some extremely expensive horse food and just leave the horse to munch on that all day. The horse gets a bucket of food once or twice a day that is completely emptied within minutes. And then for the rest of the time, they're either eating a hay net in the stable or they're out in the field. And that is exactly what our bunnies should be like. And, the ideal hard food to feed them, I have an example here, is this sort of like little pelleted food. We don't want like the muesli style is no good, is it? Because they just selectively, they pick out their favorites, which are, everybody's favorites are the unhealthy bits. So they have unhealthy bits and they can end up they can end up really low in calcium. That often gives their bones really weak. So you need the pellets, and the pellets are relatively speaking, quite expensive, but actually for bunnies, your average size rabbit, a couple of kilos, 2.5 kilos, maybe I generally tell people like a tablespoon twice a day. Would you agree?
Yeah. And also those pellets, they are basically just high fiber, aren't they? Just they're made from hay and grass. And like you said, they've got all the vitamins and supplements they need in them. Yeah. But it's hay and more hay. And then changing the hay daily, because they also like to browse and pick out bits of hay, and that's okay. With hay, that's okay to do, but not with muesli. And again, it's not only the health benefits, but it's behaviorally as well. If your bunny isn't eating hay all day, they're bored, they're not doing what a bunny should be doing. Obviously there's a huge interlink anyway between health and behavior. And we need them to be foraging and browsing and grazing and doing what bunnies should be doing all day long.
And picking out their favourites. This is something I learned quite recently, is that when you are looking to get hay for your rabbits, those smaller packets, Supreme, who are sponsoring us, do it, the dust extracted, which is why I've let them, but I don't just let anyone sponsor these things. It's only companies that we actually would use and recommend. Hay, that nice sort of sweet, tasty herbal Timothy meadow hay. But the one thing that I learned recently is that we want to give them ideally the long strands, so they can nibble their favorite bits, pick it out, go through it, pick their favorite bits out. So I think that's a really good comment to say. You need to change it. Once the day is done and they have the hay left over, that's left over for a reason.
Yeah.
They don't want it. So it's going to happen.
So you've got your nice meadow Timothy hay, and you can supplement with other types of grass hay. You can become a real knowledge buff in, grasses and hays, and there's all sorts of different types in the shop. So you can supplement with a different type of hay as well as the Timothy hay. And then your sort of herbs and your fresh leafy greens are, you can provide daily, but it's a smaller amount. And then it's your pellets. So in terms of quantity,
hay forms the basis, and it forms the basis both behaviorally, doesn't it? So they can pick out their favorites, they can spend time browsing, eating, who doesn't love to eat, but also health wise, from my perspective, there's two things that hay does. The first is it grinds down their teeth. So rabbits have these teeth that grow continually, they're continually erupting. And the reason for that is because in the wild, what they're eating tough, woody, grassy, fibrous material, grasses, and they're stripping tree bark and all sorts of things. So what we need, and if they didn't have teeth that grew all the time, those teeth would grind away to nothing really, really quickly. So the hay grinds the teeth down, and if they don't eat enough hay, or they're spoilt, and even though they get hay, they've got loads of pellets on the side, the teeth will overgrow. They will get horrible, horrible dental disease, which is really, really painful. And once it has started, it is so difficult to fix. So please, feed your bunny. So every day, a rabbit should eat a pile of hay as big as they are.
Yes.
That's my rule of thumb. And people really blink at me and they're like, wow. But yeah. And then the other health benefit that hay has is it's for gut health. It's so important. Rabbits are little intestinal systems on legs. If their stomachs are poorly, then they are poorly. And if their stomachs are healthy, then generally speaking, they're healthy. And we need that fiber. Fiber is the key. That fibrous, tough, woody stuff going through their intestinal system, keeping it churning, keeping it moving. And rabbits, fun fact, you know this, Rosie, but fun fact, they eat their poo. So rabbits produce two kinds of poo. They produce a hard little pellets that we can scoop up with a dustpan and brush, and they produce this sort of sticky, weird poo that's called cecotrophs that they eat again. And very often, if you've got a really healthy rabbit, you will never see their cecotrophs because they come out early morning. As soon as they come out, it's kind of tickly. So they get round there, eat it again, and it goes through again. And the reason that happens is because, again, the stuff they eat is quite fibrous. It takes 2 goes through the intestinal system to digest. And also it's really, really important for things like their microbiome and their gut bacterial health. And if you ever pick up your bunny and you see sticky, weird poo, they're not eating their cecotrophs and they're probably poorly, or they're too fat and they physically can't get around their enormous stomach to clean themselves. And that's a real red flag that there's something going wrong. So and this time of year, the other health problem we see with bunnies, which is just tragic, is fly strike. And that's where the cecotrophs are stuck. The rabbit can't clean them for whatever reason. The maggots get in. And again, it's just completely grim. It is so grim and almost always die. Yeah. And, just for the want of some hay. So great quality, dust extruded, fresh, tasty, long strands of hay.
Yes. And also we can encourage bunnies to use litter trays if we're working on toilet training by having a hay rack above the litter tray, because they love to eat and poop at the same time.
I love that fact about bunnies. Like, there's so many, when you start learning about rabbits and really looking into it properly, they are fascinating little creatures. And yeah, they like to eat and poo at the same time. They just sit on the toilet having a snack, in one end, out the other. Amazing. Yeah. So to litter train a bunny, it's so counterintuitive. You think, well, I wouldn't put cat biscuits in my cat's litter tray. And that's it. Bunnies are completely unique. But yeah, stick the hay in the tray. Bunny goes in the hay in one end. Yeah. Out the other. What's your feeling? Because you said something earlier I thought was quite interesting. Like you said, they should have grass every day. Because I get a lot of people that go, oh no, you have to be very careful with the fresh because it'll give them diarrhea. They can't have too much. And I'm like, well, in the wild, that's all they eat. Yeah. So as long as you don't introduce it quickly and overload their stomachs, it should be fine. So what do you think fresh?
So I think obviously hay should be the bulk of their meal, but then the next part of that comes between hay and the pellets is your leafy greens. And I think of that, grass is the less rich of it all. So grass, dandelion leaves, herbs, anything like that, they should still get daily, I think. But just a small proportion, and again mix it around the hay, so they've got to pick it out and search for it. You don't just put a massive great dollop of dandelion leaves in the pen for them to just sit and munch their way through. So put them on pegs on strings, put them in activity balls that you can thread things through, make it harder for them to have to work for and pick it out. But green leafy, whether it's grass or veg or something, should still be part of their diet, just potentially not as much as we think it should. And certainly your fruit and vegetables are really high in sugar and they're a very special treat. They are not needed. And yeah, again, that comes onto the myth of bunnies loving carrots, doesn't it? And actually, teeth-wise and health-wise, it's not ideal.
Funny. Thanks, mate. Yeah, they need the top of the carrot, not the actual carrot itself, don't they? You get, and that's the other big health problem that we see in bunnies is they are fat. They're supposed to be fluffy, but they're not supposed to be fatty. And these round little rabbits come and see me, and I'm like, well, it's got a leg at each corner. And when you get into it, often those bunnies are spoilt rotten and they're eating apples and bananas and carrots and things. And of course, the bunnies love it and they'll come. And, you know, like you say, they can be really friendly, but you have to train them. And food as training is great. So you can sit down and eat a banana. But yeah, that's your Saturday night takeaway. That's your Friday night chocolate. It's not every day. It's not a McDonald's every day, because that's what you will end up with, isn't it?
Often less space probably, and diet, extra treats for the diet that leads to these fat bunnies. And another thing actually that you mentioned, Kat, is providing apple tree branches or twigs or hazel branches for them to nibble on as well. Is really good enrichment, really good fibre, really good for their teeth, their bowels, all of those things. So that can be a really good extra.
Exactly. And stripping bark is another really natural behaviour for rabbits, isn't it? And if you don't provide something for them to strip, they'll go and find something to strip, and what they'll strip is your wallpaper.
Exactly.
So yeah, finding some, and you can get ones from the shops, can't you? But they're often a bit stale. You are better to just go, like you say, go out and get something. And I've heard a lot of people recommend fruit trees as the best. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so apple trees, twigs, when you prune, or any neighbours or anyone that's pruning their apple trees, they make really good cuttings to put in bunnies pens for them to have a good nibble on. Absolutely.
Yeah, and they so what about rabbits who live outside? How do we make their lives good? Because I think a lot of people think, you know, an outdoor pet, that's kind of a bit mean. We want them in the house, but actually it is a very natural way for them to live, isn't it? If we get it, again, like being indoors, if we get it right.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me for outdoor bunnies is the fact that a lot of the time, in order to interact with them, it involves handling them. Whereas when we've got an indoor bunny, we can be coexisting with them without having to go and handle them too much. So for me, it's the outdoor bunnies that often have these handling issues. So and if we put them in a hutch at night time and then give them a run in the daytime, that involves a lot of handling and picking up and putting up high into the hutch, for example, rather than these environments where the bunny's got access all the time to its pen, which I would recommend, because rabbits are, and I can never say this word, crepuscular. Said it.
I think that's how I would say it. That's right.
It's when they are most active at dawn and dusk. So if we're putting our bunny into the hutch at night time, we're probably missing out the part when they're going to be most active and need the space the most. So I wouldn't recommend that anyway. I'd try and provide an environment where they've got access to space 24/7. And then that also prevents us having to do much handling in and out of the hutch and the run area. But we also need to be careful that the bunnies then aren't just kind of left outside without any human handling as such. So like you said, that's the time I'd be using the fruit and the vegetables and the treats, is to work on handling. So asking bunny if they will hop up onto your lap when you're sitting on the floor, for example, and feeding them when they hop up onto your lap. So they start to associate you coming out to them with nice things. It could be a dandelion leaf. It doesn't have to be the extra tasty sugary stuff. Depends how foodie your bunny is. But yeah, just associating you coming along with nice things being given, associating bunny coming up to you with nice things being given. So you're not the one towering over them, running around trying to catch them, causing loads of stress, and being the ultimate predator, aren't we, when we go into trying to catch our bunnies mode.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That because we have rabbits because we want them to be pets, and the clue's in the name. We want to pet them, don't we? And yes, I think outdoor rabbits, given enough space and given enough freedom and given enough things to do, can live a lovely life. But there is this balance we have to strike as pet owners, because we want to spend time with them, don't we? And it is daily gentle interaction with bunnies that makes them great pets, isn't it? And they can be great pets, which, if they're inside, I think that's really interesting. They're interacting, they're there, we're there, they're there, we're all living together. But that indoor environment is just harder to get right, harder to keep safe, harder to get right, harder to make stimulating enough that your bunny isn't bored. There's just so much to know. There's just so much to know. Right, well, we've been going for 40 minutes now, which for us actually isn't too bad. Is there anything else? And I think we've covered a huge amount. So is there anything else that you would want to say about bunnies a
big tip for me is if you've got one bunny and you're getting another bunny, which we'd always recommend, is to seek help with the bonding process. If you're not sure what you're doing, seek help. So that would be a big tip for me for people who are now thinking that their bunny needs a mate, which is brilliant. No, I think we have covered. Oh, the other thing I would say, I know what I will add as well, is that we need to also be aware of, because we've got more than one bunny, and that means we need to have several different areas for each bunny. So we need to make sure we've got plentiful resources, because bunnies can get quite territorial even when they're neutered, and that territorial behaviour can kind of become a bit guardy of resources as well. So we make sure there's food. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We need lots of food bowls, and from a feeding things perspective, I think my other big tip would be let your bunnies drink out of a water bowl.
Yeah,
again, it's the little everything that's sold in pet shops to do with bunnies is to just make them as convenient as possible for us. So you're right, these tiny little hutches that aren't hutches, they're prisons, these tiny little runs that are just ever such slightly larger prisons, and these the water bottles that sit on the side, and then no, what animal drinks like that? Nothing drinks like that. And so a huge amount of rabbits are chronically dehydrated because they don't like it. They don't want to drink like that. They don't drink with their mouths in the air, and if they have any sort of dental disease, it's quite painful. So
lots of studies have shown, haven't they, that bunnies prefer to drink from a bowl of water. I generally suggest having both, because bowls of water can get manky quite quickly. They'll stand in it and splash it everywhere and poo and wee.
House rabbit bunnies, you can't be house proud. You can have to do a huge amount of cleaning to keep, to just follow them around and clean up their mess. But they are very entertaining when like you say, when they binky and you think you're a happy bunny, and that's fabulous. And it breaks my heart to know that this nation is full of tiny, lonely bunnies in a hutch at the bottom of the garden, bought as a gift and forgotten. So anything that we can do to help that is great.
Absolutely.
And if you want any more advice about rabbits, if you've got any questions, please put them in the comments. We can always chat again. But if you want any advice, get online, find your local rabbit rescue. There's loads of them in the country. If you want a rabbit, go to them in the first place and get a rescue bunny who already been neutered and vaccinated and huge amounts of things. But also they know about rabbits and can really, really help to educate you, because, like I say, it's not that we mean to mistreat them, but we're just so misinformed about them. That's the thing. So that's what I would, and so many health problems in bunnies can just be headed off at the pass by a decent diet, great hay, loads of it, good quality pellets, tiny bit of fresh that you can forage out of the garden. That's not going to cost you anything, and that is it. Get that right, and
you've got happy birds generally. Yeah,
exactly. You're halfway there, right? 45 minutes. I think that might be our quickest one ever, Rosie. Thank you so much, Rosie, for joining me. Thank you everybody for watching, and of course thank you to Supreme for sponsoring it. They're linked down below. You can go to their website. There's actually they sell really, really good food and hay products, but also on their website is loads of bunny information and all their small pets as well, guinea pigs, chinchillas. They do everything. And thanks Thanks for watching. If you have got any ideas of things that you'd like to see Rosie chat about, or if you've got anyone that you'd like to see me talk to, I'm always open to suggestions. I really enjoy doing these. When the technology works, I really enjoy doing these chats because I think it's just such a great way of getting some really good information out there. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And thank you very much, and goodbye.
See ya.